Let's get some perspective now on the week from Ed O'Keefe, who covers Congress for the Washington Post. Ed's a familiar face here as a CBS contributor, and we're very glad to say that starting next month, he'll be joining CBS News as a political correspondent.
Whoop, whoop.
Ed, welcome.
That's a good welcome. Good to see you guys.
We'll bring the horn next time.
And let's start off by talking about this meeting between President Trump and North Korea's Kim Jong Un.
Yeah.
If this occurs, it would obviously be historic. What are the risks in a meeting?
Oh, huge risks. I mean, like Errol was saying, I think the logistics of this are going to be the most complicated part of this, and then what exactly would be discussed, and what assurances are there that he would follow through. Remember, every other time Americans have engaged the North Korean regime in the last 20, 25 years, they've fallen back on their assurances of promising to work with them. So we'll see. You know, but make no mistake, this announcement, combined with all the other things the president likes to announce and do with great big fanfare, and it's just consistent with that. And whether or not the follow-through actually happens, I think will be the biggest question. You know, we've seen dramatic moves on immigration, gun control, other issues. Nothing's come of it. We'll see if we get anything out of this one as well.
And like those issues, his own administration does not seem to be on the same page. I mean,
Exactly.
we have the Secretary of State saying, I'm surprised. Usually a meeting like this is the end result of months, if not years, of careful diplomatic negotiation.
Precisely. So, you know, again, consistent with what this president has done before. Announce it first, sort out the details later, make a big splash on television. And he did that, and we'll see whether or not anything comes of it.
Late in the week, the president said he would move forward with steel and aluminum tariffs.
Right.
A move that is, he's gotten significant pushback even from within his own party on. What are you hearing from the Hill about where that stands?
Big concern. And you know, there is still a chance that later this month, in what is probably going to be the last big piece of legislation passed this year before the elections, the big spending bill, they might try to tuck in some language that would either pull that back or stop it from happening. No serious attempt at that so far. But look at those faces. Speaker Ryan said, I disagree with this decision. Those are two words the Speaker has never used in the past on almost anything that this president has done or said. Mitch McConnell said, I'm concerned. John Thune said this is causing chaos and confusion. Again, words we haven't heard from Republican leaders in response to anything this president has done shows you how deeply worried they are about this, because anything that could potentially upset that economic growth could upset Republican chances at the polls in November.
This would seem to split sort of Trump's base off from the Republican Party.
Yes.
I mean, there is actually a fairly big difference here, because there's some Democrats that actually like these tariffs.
In fact, this is a big wet kiss, in essence, just to a bunch of moderate Democrats running in industrial Midwest states who said this is great. And if I were the president, I'd do even more. So it just divides the Republicans even more and gives a gift to some of these Democrats who need something to be able to agree with the president on ahead of November.
It basically caused the president's own top economic advisor, Gary Cohen, to leave the administration.
Right. We expected Gary Cohen to go at some point. This was certainly a convenient excuse, because he had been making the argument not to do it, and he lost.
What are you hearing about a replacement?
Not much yet, but you know, Peter Navarro, who is this trade representative who's there right now, certainly now steps into a more prominent role. And interesting that the president said Gary Cohen might come back at some point, but it would have to be for a pretty good job, I think.
Another story from this week, Stormy Daniels, the adult film actress, has filed a lawsuit against the president. It is raising some potential red flags as far as election campaign finance law. What can you tell us about that? I
think the important thing to remember here is you know, this will get caught up in all of the ongoing investigating by Robert Mueller. Remember, this started with Russian interference or potential collusion with the Trump campaign. It's going to lead to things like Stormy Daniels. Sounds a lot like what happened to Bill Clinton. It started with a land deal in Arkansas. It ended up with Paula Jones and all these other things. And it just shows you that this is a wide-reaching investigation that's going to go in all sorts of different directions. There are going to be concerns about campaign finance violations. And if this non-disclosure gets tossed out in court, if she starts talking, you wonder where things will go.
Sorry, you were going to say?
Go ahead.
No, one last thing on this long list that we have, but we saw legislation passed in Florida about gun control. Is that going to change the landscape, do you think, in midterms in terms of the importance of this issue in this election?
Well, we'll see. I mean, I think there could be state legislators that either suffer or benefit from this in Florida. The legal challenge that the NRA is now promising, I think, could be a bigger test of this over time, because not only is the NRA now challenging what Florida did, there's at least one guy out in Oregon who's suing Dick's and Walmart for implementing their age limits as well. So if these court cases make their way through and test potential limits on the Second Amendment, we may not get results on that for a few years. That could be even more significant than any electoral changes in November.
Ed, we need you to clone 6 copies of yourself to get through.
This is why we had to go full time.
I mean,
one for each issue.
1 week, 17 years of news. Ed O'Keefe, congratulations, my friend. Welcome to the family. Great to see you.
Yeah.